quit comparing yourself to others. So we're going to discuss the topic of conceit in early Buddhism coming up. So I'm Doug Smith. I'm study director at the Secular Buddhist Association. That's secularbuddhism.org. And if you're interested in helping to promote a wiser and a kinder and a less stress-filled world, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll have talks like this out once or twice a week on Mondays and most Thursdays. So if they interest you, consider subscribing. So in English, when we discuss the word conceit, it tends to have the connotation of self-esteem, of egoism, self-love, overburdening self-love. But I think in Buddhism, and in particular early Buddhism, it has a more sophisticated understanding. It's not simply an object of self-esteem, it's related kinds of selfing tendencies. That is, conceit also involves self-deprecation, when we tend to think that we're worse than other people, or our notion that we are equal to other people. That is also a kind of conceit in early Buddhism. We see that in particular in the Sonna Sutta, which is a sutta I'll link down below in the notes if you're interested in reading it. Now, why isn't this skillful? Now, there are many reasons it's not skillful. One of them, which I haven't actually gotten into these videos yet, has to do with the issue of non-self. And I won't go into that in huge detail here because it's a complicated issue. But basically, for the present topic, the problem with comparison is that we tend to reify or solidify a sense of self around that concept. So if we think of ourselves as, let's say, superior to other people, that tends to solidify a sense of ourself as an unchanging being that is in some way fundamentally above others, or in the alternate case, fundamentally below others, or fundamentally on the same level as others. All of these involve a kind of a reification, a solidification of a sense of self, when the reality is that ourselves are always changing. So whatever aspects of the world go into our construction of a sense of self, those things will change moment to moment, hour by hour, month by month, year by year. And so grasping around a sense of self like that is only liable to lead us into confusions and eventually into pain and disappointment. It also can obviously lead to certain kinds of bad states of mind. In particular, if we have the thought, I am superior to others, that can lead to, as we might expect, a kind of egoism, a kind of self-esteem, overweening self-esteem, a grasping onto our sense of self, an unwillingness to let that sense of self go when it must go, because they always will go. So for example, if we think of ourselves as superior to others in playing a sport, well, we won't be superior for very long. We know the case of so many people, people who are in professional sports even, who are very, very much at the top of their game, when they retire, have nothing else to do because their sense of self, their sense of ego, their sense of superiority was so wrapped in that one particular notion that when it went away, as it must go away, they were left bereft. It can happen even younger, when people who are superior in their one sport, let's say at a grade school or at a high school or even at a college, go to the next level. And then they realize that what was superior in their previous life is now not superior in their new life in this new context. Similarly, if we think of ourselves as inferior to others, this can lead to a debilitating sense of envy or jealousy for others. It can lead to depression if we feel that we're inferior in some ultimate sense. Also, if we react against the inferiority by pushing it away, it can lead us into a position of not really working with that because we don't even want to think about it, we don't want to look at it. And in the sense that we compare ourselves to others and find ourselves equal, it can lead to a sense of complacency, a sense that we're all on the same level, so there's nothing to be done. Now, while I say that these notions of conceit are from the early Buddhist standpoint not correct because they reify a sense of self that's permanent, even though in fact our self is always changing, nevertheless, in one of the commentaries called the Nidesa, it mentions that in fact this particular frame of mind, this comparing mind, this conceit, is unskillful even if it's true. That is to say, it may be that for this momentary time, this particular part of us, this particular thing that we are able to do is superior to somebody else's, or inferior, or the same. The point is not that these are necessarily incorrect. The point is that if we grasp onto them, if we grasp onto the comparisons as relevant, what other people are doing is relevant to us in that respect, that we aren't doing ourselves a favor. And here we have to look at one of the, I think, critical parts of the early Buddhist approach to the path, which is the path is a path for you. It's a path for yourself. It's not a path of comparing. And the Buddha often remarked to monastics under his tutelage, who, let's say, would complain about somebody else or speak badly of somebody else. He would basically say, don't worry about them. Worry about yourself. Other people may be doing bad things. In that sense, they may be worse than you in certain respects. Other people may be doing good things. They may be better. It doesn't matter. What matters is your own path. Focus on your own path and don't focus in a sort of comparing mind, because as, let's say, the Stoics would say, what other people are doing is outside of your control. What is the only thing that to any extent is under your control, and even that only barely, is what you can do. Now, that said, there is one passage in the early canon, in the Anguttara Nikaya, and I'll link that down below in the notes, where Ananda, I think, says to a nun that there is one respect in which conceit can be helpful. Conceit can lead to advancement in the case where we look at somebody who is doing better than us and think to ourselves, why not me? Why can't I do that? And this can be a spur to action. The same way, in fact, that I believe Ananda also says in that sutta, that craving, which is a paramount unskillful state in early Buddhism, craving itself can also be a spur to action if we are, let's say, craving wisdom, or craving skillful behavior, or craving lack of stress, and so on. Those are healthy cravings. Now, in the same way that we may speak of healthy cravings, we can speak of healthy conceit. These are healthy only in brackets, which is to say, they're healthy for a time. They're spurs to action in a moment, but eventually they have to be overcome. We should think of Ananda's advice to this nun as bracketed, as useful in a very, very specific and limited circumstance. The comparing mind, the mind that compares ourselves to other people, is inherently problematic and inherently the sort of thing that we should be aware of in our own minds when it comes up, when it arises. Insofar as we indulge in that kind of thinking, we're only hurting ourselves in the long run. It's better to focus on our own path, on our own ability to progress or not progress, our own problems. That's not only a wise teaching, it's also a teaching that can lead us to a heart that's more of kindness and compassion for others, because we're not comparing ourselves to them. It can also lead, I think, to less stress, because we're not worried about what other people do or don't do. Which is, by the way, as I've said, not the sort of thing under our control anyway. And insofar as we're stopping to try to control things that we can't control, we are, I think, reducing the stress in our own lives. So I hope that's been useful to you. If you're new to the channel, welcome, and I'm glad to have you here. Thanks so much for all of your kind comments and questions. If you have anything to say about this stuff, about conceit, about this topic today, put it down in the questions or the comments below. Be happy to hear you, and I'm sure other people would love to read it as well. So, thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.